Cryptids have been reported for centuries, but most of the evidence is garbage. Blurry photos, campfire stories, and obvious hoaxes. But some of it is genuinely hard to explain. Today, I'm breaking down the best cryptid evidence ever recorded, starting with one that'll make you laugh. The Flatwoods Monster. On September 12, 1952, a group in Flatwoods, West Virginia saw something in the woods. The group included local boys, a mother named Kathleen May, and a 17-year-old National Guardsman. They described it independently before any newspaper picked up the story, and every single one said the same thing. A creature standing 10 to 12 feet tall with a metallic silver body, a spade-shaped head, and glowing red eyes. Multiple witnesses, kids and adults, all telling the same story with the same specific details. No phones, no internet, no way to coordinate a lie that fast. So the US Air Force investigated through Project Blue Book. Their official explanation? A barn owl sitting on a tall oak tree with shadows making it look bigger. The average barn owl is about 15 inches tall. You'd need roughly 9 barn owls stacked in a trench coat to hit 10 feet. Here's the thing though, there's zero physical evidence, no photos, no trace materials, just terrified witnesses and a really good story from 75 years ago. It's compelling testimony, but testimony is all it is. But if you think a barn owl is a weak explanation, wait until you hear what happened when a construction foreman in California found over 1,000 giant footprints in the dirt. The Jerry Crew Bigfoot footprints. In August 1958, a bulldozer operator named Jerry Crew walked onto his road construction job site near Bluff Creek in Northern California and found something that would literally change American culture. Massive footprints. 16 inches long, 7 inches wide, with a clear 5-toe pattern pressed deep into the soil. And it wasn't just a couple of prints. Over the following days, dozens of footprints were documented around the construction site, with one location alone yielding 38 clear tracks. Crew made plaster casts, brought them to the local paper, and the Humboldt Times ran the story using a term that local loggers had been throwing around for a few years: Bigfoot. The word already existed in small circles, but this moment blasted it into the national vocabulary. This guy holding a plaster cast is the reason everyone on Earth knows that name. But here's where it gets complicated. The track evidence vanished after those initial weeks and was never scientifically verified. The plaster casts still exist in private collections and museums, but the chain of custody is questionable at best, and no modern forensic analysis has ever been conducted on them. So, was Jerry Crew pulling off the greatest prank in American history? Hoaxing dozens of consistent footprints across multiple days and locations would require extraordinary commitment, but a man with access to construction equipment and a reason to generate attention? Some argue that's exactly what happened. Either way, the name Bigfoot exploded into mainstream culture because of this moment, and that alone makes it historically significant whether the prints were real or not. But if you think mysterious footprints are strange, wait until you hear about the flying creature that allegedly predicted one of America's worst bridge disasters, the Mothman. On December 15, 1967, the Silver Bridge connecting Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to Ohio collapsed during rush hour traffic. 46 people died. It remains one of the deadliest bridge disasters in American history, but here's where it gets unsettling. For the 13 months leading up to that collapse, the residents of Point Pleasant had been reporting something. Over 100 documented eyewitness accounts were filed with local authorities describing the same creature, a 6 to 7 foot tall humanoid with a gray body, a 10-foot wingspan, and glowing hypnotic red eyes. The first sighting came on November 15, 1966, when 2 young couples encountered it near an abandoned TNT plant outside of town. After that, the reports just kept coming, and roughly half of all documented sightings occurred within 6 weeks of the bridge collapse. Half. Then, the moment the bridge fell, the sightings essentially stopped. Like whatever it was had finished what it came to do. No feathers were ever recovered, no biological material, no physical trace of any kind despite extensive searches. Structural engineers have pointed to well-documented maintenance failures as the cause of the collapse, and they're almost certainly right. But the timing of that sighting cluster, 100 people all seeing the same thing in the months before a catastrophe, that's genuinely difficult to dismiss casually. This is the case that created the cryptid omen archetype. The idea that these creatures don't just exist, they show up as warnings. And whether you believe that or not, the people of Point Pleasant lived it. But if Mothman gave us the most chilling story in cryptid history, the next entry gave us the most analyzed piece of footage ever recorded, the Patterson-Gimlin film. This is the one. The single most famous piece of cryptid evidence ever captured, and after 57 years, nobody can agree on what it actually shows. October 20th, 1967, Roger Patterson and Robert Gimlin are riding horseback through Six Rivers National Forest in Northern California when they capture 59.5 seconds of 16mm film that would change cryptozoology forever. The footage shows a massive, hair-covered bipedal creature striding through a forest clearing, turning to look directly at the camera and walking away. Here's where it gets interesting. Biomechanical analysis estimates the creature at 7 to 8 feet tall and over 500 pounds. But the real debate isn't about size, it's about how the thing moves. Researchers have spent decades arguing that the creature's stride length, shoulder rotation, and overall gait pattern don't match known primate locomotion. They also don't match a human walking in a suit. The muscle movement visible beneath the hair, the compliant gait, the mid-tarsal break in the foot, none of it lines up with anything we can easily replicate. And here's the kicker. No costume materials, construction records, or fabrication evidence have ever surfaced. Not in 57 years. Hundreds of studies have been conducted on this footage. It is the single most analyzed piece of cryptid evidence in history, and it's generated over $100 million through documentaries, merchandise, and media adaptations. Real or fake, 59.5 seconds of shaky 16mm film permanently rewired pop culture. But nobody's proven it either way, and at this point, maybe that's the most remarkable thing about it. Now, if you think film evidence is hard to debunk, wait until you hear about 4 strangers in Massachusetts who all drew the exact same creature without ever speaking to each other. The Dover Demon Witness Sketches. In April of 1977, something showed up in Dover, Massachusetts, hung around for 2 nights, and then apparently decided it had seen enough. On the nights of April 21st and 22nd, 4 completely separate witnesses reported seeing the same creature. Every single one of them was a teenager, aged 15 to 17. They had no documented contact with each other before filing their reports. And every single one of them independently sat down and drew what they saw. Here's where it gets weird. The sketches match. Not vaguely, not kind of similar if you squint. They all drew the same thing. A creature standing 3 to 4 feet tall with an oversized egg-shaped head, glowing orange eyes, elongated fingers, and grayish tan skin. 4 teenagers drew essentially the same alien-looking thing without comparing notes. But here's the kicker. After April 22nd, it never appeared again. Not once. No photographs exist. No physical evidence was recovered. Local police filed official incident reports, but the investigation records remain largely undisclosed to this day. The Dover Demon showed up, traumatized a handful of kids across 2 nights, and then vanished from existence like it had somewhere better to be. And that's what makes this case so frustrating. The sketch-based evidence is either its greatest strength or its fatal weakness. There's nothing to fake except drawings, but there's also nothing to verify. 4 independent people drew the same impossible creature, and then the creature simply stopped existing. The Dover Demon didn't leave behind a single shred of proof beyond pen and paper. But if you think witness sketches are a strange form of evidence, wait until you see the photograph that made National Geographic take a lake monster seriously. The Sandra Mansi Lake Champlain photo. Most cryptid photos end up in tabloids, Reddit threads, or buried in some forum from 2004. This one ended up in the New York Times. On July 5th, 1977, a tourist named Sandra Mansi was standing on the shore of Lake Champlain near St. Albans Bay, Vermont, when she photographed something emerging from the water, a dark hump, a neck-like protrusion, roughly 15 to 20 feet offshore. Water displacement analysis puts the object at somewhere between 20 and 30 feet in length. That's not small. That's not a duck. But here's the thing. The photograph itself isn't what makes this case special. Dozens of lake monster photos exist. Most of them look like someone threw a pool noodle into a lake and hit the shutter button. What makes the Mansi photo legendary is that on June 30th, 1981, the New York Times published it. That's the first time a major mainstream outlet gave serious coverage to lake monster photographic evidence. Before the internet existed, this photo went viral through one of the most respected newspapers on the planet, and nobody has been able to definitively debunk it. Digital analysis has been conducted multiple times since the 1980s. Competing explanations include a swimming sturgeon, a floating log, wave dynamics, and shadow patterns, but none of them have been conclusively proven. The photo just sits there, stubbornly ambiguous, wearing its New York Times stamp like a badge of honor. The irony is almost poetic. A picture of what might literally be a log got into the New York Times, while more dramatic evidence from other cryptid cases got completely ignored. But credibility isn't about spectacle, it's about who takes you seriously. And speaking of being taken seriously, the next piece of evidence we need to talk about had the exact opposite problem. The Freeman footage. In 1994, someone filmed what might be the most detailed Bigfoot footage since Patterson Gimlin, and almost nobody took him seriously. The footage comes from Paul Freeman, a former U.S. Forest Service employee turned cryptozoologist, filmed in the Blue Mountains near the Washington-Oregon border. Approximately 6 minutes of video showing a reddish-brown bipedal creature, estimated between 6.5 and 7.5 feet tall, moving through dense forest terrain. But here's what makes it different from every shaky 2-second clip you've ever seen. The creature doesn't just walk by. It stops, it turns, it appears to observe the camera operator across multiple sequences. This isn't a glimpse, it's an extended behavioral interaction, the kind of documentation wildlife researchers spend years trying to capture with known animals. If you just watch the footage with no context, it's genuinely impressive. The movement looks fluid and natural. The proportions seem consistent across different angles. The creature displays what appears to be curiosity, not the panicked retreat you'd expect from a guy in a suit who knows he's being filmed. But here's where it completely falls apart. Freeman had a reputation problem. He'd already claimed multiple Bigfoot encounters in the Blue Mountains before the footage surfaced, and skeptics accused him of fabricating evidence, including footprint casts. His history as a repeat claimant made mainstream researchers dismiss him almost immediately. The original footage was shown selectively to researchers but never submitted for independent forensic analysis. No peer review, no rigorous chain of custody, nothing. In 1994, people trusted their eyes. There was no deep fake paranoia, no instant digital manipulation tools. Compelling footage carried weight on its own, but compelling isn't evidence, and a track record of extraordinary claims isn't credibility. You can't verify what nobody will seriously examine. The Freeman footage is either the most important Bigfoot documentation ever captured, or it's the work of a man who knew the wilderness well enough to stage something nobody could definitively debunk. And that's the problem. Without independent verification or forensic analysis, it will never be anything more than interesting. But if unverified footage frustrates you, wait until an entire island starts losing livestock to something nobody can identify. The Puerto Rico chupacabra livestock evidence. In March 1995, 8 sheep turned up dead in Puerto Rico, puncture wounds, drained of blood, no obvious predator tracks, and that was just the beginning. Over the next several months, over 150 livestock were reported dead across the island. Sheep, goats, chickens. By August, eyewitness Madeline Tolentino reported seeing the creature itself in Canovanas, and the story exploded. For rural farming communities, this wasn't a spooky campfire story. This was an economic crisis. Families depended on these animals for income and food, and something was killing them at an alarming rate. That's what makes this case different from almost every other cryptid event. The stakes were real before anyone even mentioned a monster, but then they mentioned the monster. Farmers started reporting a creature 3 to 4 feet tall, gray or greenish skin with spines running down its back and fangs, a spiny alien vampire. Puerto Rico's Department of Natural Resources investigated and concluded that known predators and disease were responsible. Lab analysis of the animal remains found 0 unknown biological material. No mystery, DNA, no alien saliva, nothing. Here's where it gets funny though. None of that mattered. The chupacabra became the first cryptid to go fully international through modern media. Merchandise, t-shirts, toys. The story crossed over into alien abduction narratives despite exactly 0 evidence of extraterrestrial involvement. The creature that government scientists said didn't exist became a global brand worth millions. 150 dead goats turned into a cultural empire. The real mystery isn't what killed the livestock. It's how a regional predator problem became one of the most marketable monsters in history. But if you think anonymous creatures are hard to pin down, wait until someone actually mails in photographs of one. The Mayaka skunk ape Photos. Most cryptid evidence comes from deep wilderness, remote forests, mountain ranges, places where you'd expect something unknown to hide. But the Mayaka photos, those supposedly show a giant ape standing near someone's backyard in suburban Florida. In December 2000, someone mailed 2 photographs to the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office, signed only as an anonymous elderly woman. No return address, no phone number, just a brief letter and 2 prints on genuine Kodak paper. The letter described an ape that had been coming into her yard for 3 nights to steal apples off her back porch. The photos show a reddish-brown bipedal creature estimated at 7 to 8 feet tall, partially obscured by palmettos near a residential property. In one image, the creature appears to be looking directly at the camera. Daytime lighting, clear enough to actually see physical detail. For cryptid photography, that's practically HD. But here's the thing, the creature's face is obscured or partially hidden in both shots. Private researchers who analyzed the prints claim the body structure was consistent with an unknown primate, pointing to muscle definition and proportions that didn't match a standard gorilla suit. Skeptics fired back that the conveniently hidden face and inconsistent anatomical details between the 2 images screamed costume or composite photography, and the anonymous submission makes verification completely impossible. No chain of custody, no follow-up from the photographer, no official investigation. It's the classic cryptid evidence ceiling, where the quality of what you're looking at is permanently capped by the source's refusal to be identified. There's something almost charmingly pre-internet about mailing anonymous photos to a local office and just hoping someone takes it seriously. Still, the suburban setting is what makes these photos linger. A 7-foot ape in the Himalayas feels distant. A 7-foot ape near your patio furniture in Florida, that's a different kind of unsettling. But if anonymous photos bother you, wait until a trail camera removes the human element entirely. The Jacobs trail cam photos. Every piece of cryptid evidence we've talked about so far has one thing in common: a human being decided when to press record. That's the fundamental problem. People choose angles, people choose timing, people have agendas. But on September 16th, 2007, a trail camera in the Allegheny National Forest of Pennsylvania didn't care about any of that. A member of the Jacobs family, a local hunter, had set up an automated camera in a remote stretch of forest. That night, the camera captured a sequence of images showing a bipedal creature estimated at 7 to 8 feet tall, consistent body structure, consistent coloration, across multiple frames, all from the same night. Here's what makes this different from almost everything else. The camera location, date stamps, and equipment specifications were all documented and verified by independent researchers. This is the most methodologically rigorous photographic cryptid evidence ever collected in terms of documentation process. Nobody can argue about chain of custody. Nobody can claim the timestamps were faked. The paperwork is clean. But here's where the frustration kicks in. Follow-up investigation at the site found 0 biological material, no hair samples, no physical evidence of any kind, and the images themselves still ambiguous. Skeptics argue it's a bear photographed from an unusual angle, or a known animal in a weird posture. The cryptozoology community pushes back hard on that, pointing to the consistent bipedal stance across sequential frames. A bear doesn't hold that posture across multiple triggered shots like that. The automated camera eliminates the human staging problem that destroys most photographic evidence. No one was standing there choosing when to press the shutter. Whatever triggered those cameras triggered them on its own. And somehow, after 50+ years of searching for Bigfoot, the most objective camera system we've ever deployed still couldn't give us a clear answer. That's not reassuring. That's maddening. But if blurry forest photos frustrate you, wait until you see what a residential security camera in Fresno captured, because that footage doesn't look like anything on Earth. The Fresno Nightcrawler CCTV footage. Every other piece of evidence on this list you can at least categorize. Big hairy biped, lake creature, winged humanoid. The Fresno Nightcrawler doesn't fit into any category because nothing like it has ever been described before or since. On November 5th, 2007, a residential CCTV camera in Fresno, California picked up something crossing a front yard. 2 separate incidents, captured over several minute intervals. The creatures, if that's even the right word, stood roughly 3 to 4 feet tall. They appeared to be almost entirely legs, long, white, stilt-like limbs with a tiny lump of a head on top. No visible arms, no visible torso to speak of, just legs and a head walking. And the walking is the part that breaks breaks people's brains. The movement is jerky, mechanical, almost robotic. The legs bend and extend in a rhythm that doesn't match any known animal locomotion. It's not how a person walks. It's not how a bird walks. It's not how anything walks. The knees, if they even are knees, seem to flex in the wrong direction at the wrong speed, creating this deeply unsettling puppet-like stride across the yard. The footage hit the internet in 2008 and immediately created an entirely new cryptid. Not a variation of Bigfoot, not a regional monster legend. Something completely original. Here's where the logic gets genuinely funny. Believers point to the movement and say no human in a costume could replicate that gait. Therefore, it must be real unknown biology. Skeptics point to the exact same movement and say no known animal moves like that either, therefore it must be fake. Both sides are using the same evidence to reach opposite conclusions, and neither side can disprove the other. It's the most perfectly circular argument in cryptid history, and it's kept this footage alive for nearly 20 years. But the original CCTV system was never independently verified. No official investigation was conducted, no follow-up sightings were reported nearby, and no forensic video authentication has ever been published. The Nightcrawler exists in this bizarre limbo where it's too weird to explain and too unverified to confirm. But if you think one piece of footage is strange, wait until the same creature apparently showed up again 4 years later in one of America's most famous national parks, the Yosemite Nightcrawler footage. 4 years after the Fresno Nightcrawler footage introduced the world to something nobody had a name for, something with the exact same silhouette showed up again, except this time it wasn't on a residential security camera in someone's front yard, it was inside Yosemite National Park. In September 2011, roughly 90 seconds of infrared trail camera footage surfaced, showing a pale, elongated, bipedal figure moving through Yosemite's forest terrain at night. The creature stood an estimated 6 to 7 feet tall, significantly larger than the Fresno figures, but the movement pattern was unmistakable. That same strange, stilted gait, those same impossibly thin, elongated limbs. Whatever walked through a Fresno driveway in 2007 apparently decided to take a hike through one of the most famous national parks on Earth, and that's where this case gets genuinely uncomfortable. Yosemite isn't some uncharted stretch of wilderness where anything could be hiding. This is one of the most visited, most monitored, most photographed national parks in the United States. Millions of visitors per year, rangers patrolling constantly, trail cameras, research stations, satellite imaging. If something unexplained is walking through Yosemite at night, the implications are fundamentally different from a creature spotted in remote backcountry that nobody's mapped. This is America's backyard. People propose there, families camp there, and something that doesn't match any known animal apparently strolled through it on camera. The person who submitted the footage claimed the camera location and timestamp metadata were verified. But here's where it gets complicated. Those claims were never independently confirmed by Yosemite Park authorities. Cryptozoology researchers filed formal requests with the National Park Service asking for investigation or comment. They received zero official response. Not a denial, not a debunking, not even a dismissal, just silence. That silence has become its own piece of evidence. The cryptozoology community is genuinely split on what it means. One camp says it's institutional cover-up, that the NPS saw something they couldn't explain and chose to say nothing. The other camp says the Park Service looked at the footage, wasn't impressed, and didn't feel it warranted a response. Both interpretations are uncomfortable in their own way. Either something unexplained is moving through a national institution and nobody official will address it, or the evidence was so unconvincing that it didn't even deserve a no. The footage itself sits in that frustrating middle ground. The image quality is poor enough that definitive analysis is impossible. A human in minimal clothing, shadows warping a normal figure through infrared distortion, these are reasonable explanations. But the footage is also clear enough that the creature's movement is distinctly strange. It doesn't walk like a person. It doesn't move like any known animal, and it looks exactly like something filmed less than 80 miles away 4 years earlier. That's the pattern that runs through every case in this video. Across 60 years of cryptid evidence, the cases that stay unsolved aren't necessarily the ones with the worst footage or the weakest witnesses. They're the ones where the people who could provide answers simply stopped talking. The investigations that went quiet, the agencies that never responded, the film reels that vanished into private collections. The silence isn't proof of anything, but it's the reason we're still asking. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.